Welcome to Real Time Review. I'm your host, Jesse Nussman, and with me this week is actually Chris Escobar, the Executive Director of the Atlanta Film Society. And Chris, very excited to have you here today because we're talking about the upcoming Atlanta Film Festival. Just first, as kind of like a way to get us spitballing here, where can people go to sort of get more information on the festival if they're interested in finding out about the selection, getting tickets? Maybe they're just like, I didn't even know Atlanta had a film festival.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, thanks, Jesse, first for having me on. AtlantaFilmFestival.com is definitely best source of information for people to look at it either by schedule, start diving into the film guide and go, okay, I just want to check out the documentaries, or I only want to look at the short films, or maybe it's just the horror films or whatever. There's really something for everyone.
So I'm always kind of curious because different film festivals kind of have their own individual character to them.
Sure.
What would you say is kind of like the character of the Atlanta Film Festival?
Atlanta is our character. We're the longest running celebration of cinema in the city, 48 years running strong. We're the first film festival here, and there's been all kinds of course, other great festivals that have started that do have focuses. We kind of like to have a little bit of something for everyone and really reflect all of Atlanta from not only our different communities, ethnicities, interests, but really the different, stylistic choices, all of that. So you see, really about a quarter of our films are from Georgia, but then they're playing alongside the latest and greatest from around the country and around the world. And these are competitively chosen. We're actually one of the 10 most competitive film festivals on the planet out of over 4,000 plus worldwide. We receive as many as 10,000 submissions of films and screenplays, so you know that what we're getting and what we're ultimately selecting is not only the best of the best, because at a certain point quality alone is not enough.
Right.
You also got to do, okay, this is interesting, this is different, we didn't play something like this last year, and this is across short films, feature films, documentaries, narratives, music videos, virtual reality, episodic content. I mean, we really have so much under one festival.
So what do you think is kind of the best way for people to kind of like program their own sort of lineup to announce? Because I know from going to film festivals in the past myself, like it can be a little overwhelming when you like look at the abundance of titles.
Almost too much. Right. I would say first, start with something that feels like you and something you know. So if you're like, I like to watch a lot of documentaries at home or whatever, maybe start with a documentary, right? And then throw it with something that's completely out of your wheelhouse, right? Because I think some of the most incredible experiences people have is when they kind of walk in blind, something that's very much, outside of their norm, right? So maybe you're like, I'm going to watch a film from Africa or from Europe or whatever, right? There, we have so many different foreign films, and then I would say, if you're only going to do three, do one familiar, one you're not familiar, and then do a shorts block in there, because that's where we have, in one 70, 90-minute sitting, you'll watch 6 or 7 different short films that aren't just fantastic, have been thematically chosen carefully by our programmers to kind of work as one sitting. If this were food, this would be a very interesting tasting that you'd go through. A
nice little smorgasbord to enjoy.
Exactly.
Well, I definitely want to hear about some of your favorite titles that are going to be playing this year. Since we are in the great city of Atlanta, are there any sort of Atlanta-specific or Georgia-specific titles that you really want to sort of point audiences to check out?
And that would be tough for me to pick one. Like I said, a quarter out of our 150 films, are playing or tied to Georgia, and that's across all the categories, really. So we really have some fantastic things where it's not only that film, just happened to be shot here, but that's a film by a writer director that's based here. It's a film that has a local based actor, and the important thing to note is we're an Academy Award qualifying festival. Being as competitive as we are, it's not just, oh, that's cool for a local film. No, these local films are hold their own up alongside. If we didn't tell you, you wouldn't know. Maybe unless you start recognizing locations, right? But this is incredible talent that's showcased, and so it would be tough for me to pick a favorite or and that kind of stuff. So.
Well, do you have any kind of off the top of your head, if you want to, list of 4 or 5 recommendations?
So I'll call out a few that maybe are going to be a little bit less on people's radar, because we have. The local films, I think, have an audience. There's a great connection to the community. We have a number of films with recognizable names and faces, Anne Hathaway, So those films don't need my help, right?
Right.
I want to recommend some films that might not be as obvious to people. So I'll start the first, ASOG, which is an incredible film from the Philippines. that follows the main character over a journey. And this is a film that is really form blending. It first and foremost focuses on this area that was especially hard hit by this super tsunami. That might think, okay, this is just going to be a heartbreaker film, but instead, actually, it's really inspiring, really beautiful. The resilience these people have, while reconciling a lot of loss, right? And so it's something that it blends the forms between documentary and narrative. It was a selection at the Cannes Film Festival. It was a selection at several prestigious film festivals worldwide. We're incredibly lucky to have it here, and it's actually one of the few films that's going to be playing twice. So
wow.
ASOG, A-S-O-G.
Okay.
A couple others I'll put. So a documentary, to kind of throw you one, is one called Happy Campers.
Okay.
And that focuses on this community on the coast of Virginia that has it's a vacation trailer park.
Okay.
It's been there for many decades. Working class families who have managed to carve out a little bit of paradise for themselves. And you get to see what they love about it and the simple pleasures in life and kind of enjoy it with them. But they've also gotten news that the whole property is going to get redeveloped. And so they're grappling with, okay, how do we make the most of the time we have left, which is kind of an important lesson for all of us in our own ways, in our own lives. So these are a couple examples from both across the world and across the region, narrative and documentary, that might not be on your radar, but anybody watches these films, honestly. Some films are for a certain interest and certain taste, but honestly, I feel like these two, nobody will see these and not love them.
So I'm curious, before we wrap things up here, do you have kind of like a special memory of being involved with this festival for so long, of just sort of like one experience that really just sort of stands out to you, from like, I was not expecting to love this kind of film, or just something that's happened in the past that, can give people an idea of what to expect?
Yeah, so like a few examples, like, that's more of an arc. Like, I love the small role that we've played in the rise of Danielle Deadwyler's career, who, she was being featured in short films and then starting to be in feature films that we were playing, and of course alongside, appearing in several different works by Tyler Perry, and now, has this huge career and is leading films. We're incredibly proud to have been a little part of her career. Similarly, we've had, amazing events and stories. This is now 10 years that we've been at the Plaza Theater, of which I've since come to purchase personally, so it's a interesting kind of way things play out there. But we've done phenomenal events at a number of venues, and I just think about not only the film screenings, but we've been very lucky to have incredible guests join us to do William H. Macy or James Rooker and James Gunn, Michael Rooker. Lots of people who will come and do talks and panels, master classes, conversation with. And the nice thing is a lot of these things kind of are surprises and get added and announced either last minute, or people show up, don't know that Lupita Nyong'o is there watching the film with us or stuff like that. And a part of it is, people who are here filming in town and maybe they can't commit until doing something until last minute. And then another aspect is people who just want to come and enjoy a movie just with everybody else. And so you really never know who's going to show up.
That's an experience I love so much about going to places like the Plaza and all these other, and the Terra and all these great places. I've been to screenings at the Plaza where like Francis Coppola just sort of showed up and stuff. And I think it's so cool having that kind of film history kind of ingrained in the city.
Yeah, and so that's part of why we make a point to be in these temples to cinema, so to speak. And this will be the first time, even though the film festival is 48 years old and the Terra is 56 years old, that the film festival has actually happened at the Terra. Wow. So that's kind of a cool historic moment for us.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today, and for all the work you do in the film industry here and the film community here in Atlanta.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully we will have you back for another episode, but until then, we will see you at the movies.